Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series, The Perfect Guide. Today, we have with us a great trainer who does not need an introduction. Anyone who's been in the sports is definitely has been inspired by her at some time or the other. So, hi, Mia.
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
You too. So, let's start with a basic question which we would really like to know is how did you get into dog training and what was that moment, when you felt that this is it and you want to continue in this field?
Okay, so I got my first dog when I was 14 years old, and I basically wanted always to have a dog and train it since I was 4 years old. And my first dog was Belgian Shepherd Tervuren, and later he became a working champion, and also he placed third place in the Finnish championships. And after this Tervuren, I bought my first working malinois, and the dog training was just a hobby for me first. And later, when I placed in the World Championships, then it became my profession too. So this happened like 2008. So I trained dogs since 1994, 14 years first as
Wow,
a hobby. And then I have trained now 12 years as a professional dog trainer.
wow. Okay, that's great. Okay. So now a basic question for the pet owners here in India.
Yeah.
So very often, we hear owners telling us that I entered and my dog knew that he did something wrong. So does the dog really know when he's done something wrong, or is it just because the owners enter, saying statements like "What did you do?" and all of those expressions that is making a difference?
Yeah, so dogs are very good in reading the handlers or the owner's body language, and usually when the dog has done something wrong, the handler is, for example, very stiff from his body. He can be angry, and of course, these emotions are contagious, so the dog can feel them. And if we have very sensitive dog, maybe the handler has never punished the dog, but even that the handler is just watching at the dog and feeling dissatisfied or angry, the dog can feel pressure out of it, and thus it can show like avoidance or submissive behavior. And also many dogs, they have been punished because they have done something wrong, and so they basically are just like anticipating the correction, what they feel that when the handler is angry, it might happen now. So usually the dog is not like knowing that he's doing something wrong, but he's reading the handler's body language.
Right. And another question related to this, if a dog is freezing after this moment of of the owner coming in, and if the dog freezes after that kind of a correction, what would you suggest that we can do if he just freezes? Is that okay?
So the dog is like a freezing, like not moving at all.
Yes,
I
after
think,
he hears the no, after he hears a no, or what did you do? And if the dog is just freezing.
okay. Um, well, I think it's depending a little bit on the situation, but usually in the training, if the dog is doing something wrong and I have to say him, no, stop what you are doing, and he's freezing, I would try to help the dog to feel good again, saying, give him like a task, for example, come here, or give him something to do, like you can come next to me and all is fine now, and show him that there is, when he makes cooperation with me, there is nothing to worry about.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So
So
the recovery is equally important.
yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. Moving on. So there's a lot of yelling and screaming that happens at the dogs, although repeatedly, I'm sure every trainer is speaking about how to be calm. So what is your take on that?
So I think the better solution would be to stay calm, and of course we need to teach the no command with most of dogs. But some dogs don't need any physical corrections. And if we tell them no in the calm and low voice, like if you hear kind of like a lower vocal register, it's more dominant, and we can mean it. We can say, hey, stop doing what you are doing now. Yeah. And then if we have a typical working dog who has more drives, who is more impulsive, perhaps we also need to strengthen the no command with some physical correction, like a leash correction, or stopping what the dog is doing at the moment, like biting our clothes, or humping our pillow in the sofa or something like this when they are puppy. And then of course we still should stay very calm and say, no, don't do this. Then correct the dog. And then when the dog is then stopping what he's doing, then we should of course give him feedback that now he's okay, now he's nice, and now we are satisfied what the dog is doing, so that we can recover the dog from that bad feeling what we caused for him. But yelling, I think, is not important.
Right. Okay. So for people who are joining in right now, we are speaking about emotions in dog training. So please feel free to drop in your questions in the comment section below, and we are going to be answering them personally. Okay. So Mia, moving on. What is the importance of a verbal praise, along with the reward? So some of us, we just say a good boy and we just simply give the reward. So is that enough, or we need to definitely add a lot more emotions while praising, while rewarding?
Yeah, so I feel that emotional praising is extremely important, because emotions are contagious, and it's also scientifically proven that the dog can feel different emotions, what we express for the dogs. And learning to praise the dog with different voices, we can also deepen our relationship with the dog. And we can also wait a moment, I lose you because somebody tries to call me, so my
Okay.
laptop is changing the screens. And so yeah, so we can also make the rewarding much more inspiring for the dog, so the dog wants to work harder to get the reward when the rewarding is nicer for him. And also we can make those training sessions much more interesting and exciting for the dog. So I feel that it's really important to learn to use different emotions in the praising voice. And for example, I use personally 6 different praising voices. So
Can you give us a few examples?
I can give you some examples. So for example, when my dog is sitting in front of me, or sitting in the basic position, and I want like maximize the focus of the dog without the dog going out of the position, I can use this kind of surprising voice, like, boy, super. So I rise a little bit the voice up, like, hi, and I wait a few seconds, and I connect to this rewarding voice, something really cool happening like next. So when I can throw a ball, or I can give a lot of food, and there I can use this kind of like a very proud voice, like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Ooh, super cool work. So a lot of like the dog really feels that I'm proud of him. And then, for example, if the dog is in a long down, or I want the dog to stay more calm and more relaxed, I can use these kind of long syllables, like super nice, that is really good. So this kind of self-confidence and calming and comforting voice also goes to the dog's feeling in that moment. So always depending on different situations, what kind of emotions I'm expressing. And also in the competition, it can be very handy, because there also I can use these certain kind of praising voices depending on the situation, what I want to enhance.
Wow, that is interesting. That is really, really interesting. Okay, now, like you said, you gave us the examples of the different voices. Is it important to also feel the right emotion, or it's okay if we are just have the right expressions on the face?
I feel that dog training is very much similar like acting in theater. So if you watch movies or you go to watch some theater shows, the really good actor or actress can make you feeling those emotions. It's very convincing. So I feel the same that also when you train your dog, and you are very convincing in your emotions. So you don't definitely need to feel in that moment them, but if you are a good dog trainer, you can act like you would feel them. So even sometimes you are slightly disappointed what the dog is doing, but then the dog does something right and you want to reward him. It's really important to learn to fake those emotions. And it's not only voice and vocal rewarding, it's the whole body. You have to, like for example, if I say like this, "Oi," I don't throw it now, but I have a goosebumps. Like my I can really feel it. Like so it's not only like oi, you know, and the same is also when you're praising your dog with your like a super nice, you are smiling. But if I say super nice, super good, I don't smile at all. It's completely different emotions what you are now feeling. Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely,
and I feel like this. You also start to feel like that it's nice when I'm smiling at you, and this is really scientifically proven that this emotional contagion it happens between humans, but also between dogs and humans.
Okay. So I can completely relate to this. Like once I was training my dog into heel position, and I kept
Yeah,
saying good boy, but I was really nervous about, where he was sitting, about the position. And I kept
yeah,
looking very nervously, but I was not smiling. And that's when my partner sitting in front said, just smile. And I was like, oh. And the minute I smiled, he started again, he got back into the position. So I think, yeah, I had to fake it as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, that is very typical actually, and I believe that that's also often happening in the competitions when the handlers are more nervous, and they
Right,
start to move with the fingers. They get very stiff, and they get very. They should be very upright. Feel like something like you put clothes hanging to the hanger that you have like
right,
this upright position, and your whole body expression shows to your dog that you know what you are doing and you are very
right.
comfortable, and that goes into your dog.
Perfect, perfect. So Mia, you've been competing with Helge, Reti, and then Inspis, and it's been like I think your 2009 championship performance. I still remember with Helge, which had got us really awestruck. So how do you really manage your nervousness, your excitement before the competitions?
So the one thing what always comforts me is that I have prepared my dogs really well to the competition situations. So we have done it so many times. So not only to my dog, but also I try to handle my dog in the same way in the training, like I'm gonna handle him in the competitions. So I'm very sure what I'm doing. And I feel that we actually can do it in any other way. So I know exactly how I'm gonna guide my dog to the judge, and what kind of voice I'm gonna use in different situations, how many seconds I'm waiting before I give the new command, and so on. So everything is very well prepared. But then, of course, also I'm also feeling nervous because. I have high expectations, and I also feel that people have high expectations. They always want to see excellent obedience, and so that makes a lot of pressure. Um, and, uh, and thus, before I take my dog, I'm doing a vocal warm up. So I'm basically training my voice. I have different exercises to my lips to relax my to my voice and so on. And I'm also doing a physical warm up. So I make sure that I'm sweating a little bit because that helps me to relax. And when I take my dog, I can feel more relaxed and confident. So that's also
Wow.
one thing what I'm doing before the trials. And then of course I have some mental training too. So I'm going through the whole performance, everything how it goes when everything goes perfect. But then I'm also preparing myself like what could possibly go wrong and what I'm doing then if those mistakes happen. So what's my solution for those? So I'm prepared for that too.
Wow. Okay. That is interesting. Again, can you give us a little examples of your vocal exercises and your physical exercises just before the trial?
Okay, so for example, I can that looks really ridiculous now for you, but I can, for example, I can make like a something like that. So you get the lips, different. Then I can, for example, sing a little bit.
Wow.
I can have some. I can walk. I can jog a little bit. I can do all kind of. I want to open usually my shoulders, so I'm more
Wow.
relaxed here, and so the voice can also come more natural way then out.
Super. Wow. That's really
But, you know,
interesting.
but I try to do this, of course, like not so super publicly, so that people start to come to wonder what I say. Yeah.
Right, right.
But I think that the worst would be, for example, to just sit in the car and be very close. So you have to take like an upright position. You have to open yourself that the dog can
Right.
feel that you are self-confident.
Right. Wow. Okay. That is interesting. So can you tell us a little bit about the tail wag in dogs? So obviously in competitions as well as in your pet dogs, that mostly people believe that a tail wag means happiness. But of course, there are times when we've seen obedience in dogs where they're not making any mistakes, but the tail isn't wagging as much. So can you give us a little bit into what does that mean?
Okay, so the tail wagging, of course, can tell that the dog is in a higher arousal state. So in a higher arousal state, the dog can be very, very enthusiastic, very happy, or it can also be very nervous. So we have to always observe the dogs very holistically. And that means that we shouldn't only observe the tail. We can have some dog, for example, who feels very good, very relaxed, very happy. But the tail is wagging, for example, like quite slowly and a bit more lower. And then it can happen that the dog is wagging the tail like very high up like this, but he has like ears behind. The eyes can be a bit glazed, like this,
Yeah.
and he can be panting a lot, and the panting, ears very behind, like widened eyes can they are usually signs of stress. And then we know that even the dog is wagging his tail, he's actually not so happy. He should be more confident and more relaxed. And then so only, like, for example, beautiful healing shouldn't be only like judged by the tail position. But then also we have some dogs that, for example, in the healing, they have the tail very stiff. They don't move it at all. And usually then we could say that the dog should be a little bit more relaxed, because also very stiff tail isn't what we want in the healing. The dog should be moving and enthusiastic and focus on what he's doing. But it can be a sign that the dog should be a little bit more relaxed. And then, for example, in the basic positions, it depends also on the situation. So sometimes in the basic position, the dog should, there the dog can be more like focused on the next exercise. If the ears are up, the dog is like a little bit like holding his breath, and the eyes are normal, but the tail isn't wagging. It can tell something that this kind of dog is, when he is focused, then he is always holding the tail more calm. And then some dogs can also wag the tail. So it's often like a bit more highly aroused dogs, highly more energetic, more temperament dogs often wag the tail all the time. But it is like there are many different signs of stress or enthusiasm, and thus it's very important that we look the dog very holistically. And that's why the judge is also in the middle of the field and never watching the trial from the monitor, for example, because from the videos we never can see all those signs.
Right, right. So, on this note, how are all your three dogs, Helge, Retty, and Inspis? How are they? in this context with wagging the tail? Are they all very,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question because Ratu was a very high temperament dog, so he was more lively. He was this kind of always happy dog, so everything made fun for him, and he was also serious dog, and he was often wagging his tail, for example. Also, if I could praise him in the basic position, he could wag his tail there. But Helge, for example, he was more serious dog, so he was slowly wagging his tail. He was when he was healing, but when he was in the basic position, he was more like focused, like what's happening next. And if I would praise him, he would be more like, yeah, I know I'm really good, but can you give me the next one? And then he was happy to do that. And Inspis is even more serious in Helge, and also Inspis is very extremely dominant dog. So Inspis is very dangerous if he wags his tail very high and up like this, because that means he's in the fighting mood. And that is not something what I want in obedience. So his tail wagging is like with Helge, it goes like more natural, more free in healing, but it's I see him wagging his tail like very fast only when he's very highly aroused, and that's happening like in protection training. But there he is in the fighting mood, so it's always depending on the dog.
right. Okay, here someone is saying that very cool about the voice exercises. I also use singing before an agility run in big
Yeah,
competitions to keep my body from locking up from nerves.
yeah, that's really good.
All right. Okay. So we have a question here. Do you prefer dogs with mouth open or closed in searching? Does it make a difference if the dog can ultimately find the object? And is it any different in tracking?
Okay, so nowadays I train my dogs only for tracking, because we don't have the object searching in IGP rules. But I have before also trained my dogs to rescue sport, like where they have been searching people and searching objects. In tracking, I prefer, because it's very low arousal. The IPO tracking is usually very short, and it's very low arousal work for the dog, and is a lot of discipline obedience there too. So I prefer that the dog is very focused, and then the mouth is usually closed. And often when the dog gets more highly aroused, then it starts panting. But the panting also, it has a bit negative impact in searching often. But it's, of course, we also have to understand different weather conditions, or if the dog is running and searching people, for example, in the hot weather, it's clear that then the mouth can open. And also we have to understand that also in the very hot weather, the dog can also open his mouth, for example, in tracking, when the track comes longer. So again, we have to look more like holistically. We have to look like if the dog is highly motivated, very self-confident, and also very focused in his searching. But generally, yes, I would prefer a bit more that my dog would search or like track with a closed mouth.
Okay. I think Kashi, that helps. Moving on, about a little bit about obedience, Mia. So if a dog is slow in obedience, is it to do with the emotions or with the skill?
Okay, so this is, of course, this can be due to many reasons. It could be that the dog is not interested in the primary reward. For example, the dog doesn't want so much the food, or he doesn't want so much the toy, what he gets after the exercise. And then the solution would be, of course, that the handler makes the rewarding more exciting for the dog, like makes the dog more hungry, makes the using more emotions when giving the food, and changing the food a little bit, and stuff like that, or plays more interestingly, lets the dog win more often the toy, or something like this, like enhancing and the value of reward. Or it can be also because the training itself, the handler, is not enough inspiring, not enough emotional, not enough clear for the dog, and then can be that the dog loves the reward, but the exercising itself is boring for the dog, or he feels submissive. And then, of course, the handler must use more emotions, learn to be better communicating with the dog. And then the third reason could be that the dog feels, for example, that the training is too difficult. He doesn't understand what the handler wants from the dog. And then, of course, the training can be maybe the handler is expecting too much from the dog, or goes forward too fast. And then, of course, the solution is that the handler makes the training more simple, more easy to understand for the dog, and lessens the conflict in this way. And then, of course, the fourth reason could be that we just have a dog who is not suitable for the sport, because some dogs can be very low driven, or maybe very fearful, and they are happier. We maybe have to just lower our expectations. We never get to the high level with them. Maybe we only train them to do some simple tasks and have fun with those dogs. They are better as a family dogs than as a sport dog. So even the best trainer cannot change the personality of the dog. So that's also one possibility.
Right. Totally. Okay. Kashi has a follow-up question about the tracking. How do you condition the dog to close his mouth in tracking?
I personally, I don't focus on the mouth. I focus on the motivation, that the dog is very focused. And usually when the dog is very focused on, like, the dog wants to have the food, for example, what I offer in the track in every step when it's a little puppy, and then the dog has to search each piece of food so that it's well hidden. And when the dog is very focused, it happens automatically that the dog closes the mouth then. So it would be the same, like, I don't focus on my dog like closing his mouth before, for example, I give him the permission to run in send away forward, or before I give him the permission to fetch the dumbbell. But it often happens automatically when the dog is super focused on his work. So it's like I'm only focusing on the motivation, the self-confidence, and of course that the dog learns those skills what are needed in the track, that he learns to make it step by step, and yeah.
Got it. Okay. We have already spoken about this, but is there anything else you would like to add here? Emotional changes prior to the trial, preparing and conditioning the emotions at the start of the trial. We have addressed this question, but would you like to add something here?
Okay, so I would say that it is we cannot do much in the competition. So we should first of all, when I'm training, when I start to prepare my dogs to competition, it starts from young puppy age. It starts immediately when they are 8 weeks old. And the first thing, of course, I create like very high motivation to work with me, very high motivation to get the reward, what I give them afterwards. So, and then I teach my dogs to shift from cooperation to reward, and from rewarding to cooperation, and that must happen very smoothly. And when this is done, and the dog has learned all those exercises, he has learned to do them like separately, then I put them all together, and then I start to prepare my dog to this kind of competition pattern. And it means that we always have 2 dogs in the next to the field. We enter the field like in the competitions. We have 1 judge there. We go to shake the hand of a judge, and everything happens very similar. And then I can see that what kind of individual dog I have in my hands. Some dogs, they need more, let's say they need more calming. They need they need more like how to say. I have to work more that they can control themselves. Basically, they are able to focus and wait more longer periods without getting nervous. And then with some dogs, I need to focus more on the high emotions, like get them more explosive, get them more energetic. And so depending on those dogs, then the next 1 year I'm focusing on these kind of things. So when I basically then enter the competitions, my dog are very well conditioned what's going to happen, and they have learned to be and stay in a certain emotional stage throughout the whole performance without getting nervous, staying very self-confident and staying very motivated.
Okay, got it. Now, getting back to the training part, right? When we are teaching them these exercises, would you prefer free shaping, or would you prefer during where the handler is much more active? Because there is, obviously sometimes in free shaping, we end up saying that the dog is way more active. But would you prefer one over the other? Do they have any advantages, or you use both in different exercises? You use both. What would you prefer to use?
I always train my dogs as individuals. So some of the dogs, they need more shaping, especially if they are a bit more passive dogs and more, let's say, low temperament, like they are not so lively, they are not so energetic. They usually benefit from the free shaping, but also we need to know when we should be active, and how should we be active, because they also need some, they need a lot of excitement also what we have to add for rewarding. And also before I shape them, I can make the situation, I can create a situation where I get them easily showing some behavior, what I then can reward. And then vice versa, when we have, for example, very impulsive dogs or dogs with extreme temperament traits, such as like, let's say, this kind of dogs who are like seeking all kind of sensations, like sensation seekers, then it's very usually good that we give them more guidance. We help them to understand what we want from them. And this is very easily, we can also see this at school, that if we have ADHD children and we would just put them to the classroom and tell them that, okay, now you have to figure out yourself how to solve this task, they would just become quite active and do the wrong do wrong solutions for that, and it could be quite a chaotic situation afterwards. And the same happens also with impulsive dogs. We have a lot of dogs, especially in the working breeds, who are quite impulsive, and they need more external guidance and more help from the handler. And I also shape with them, but I have to be very clear how I shape with them, in which situations and in which exercise. So it also depends on the exercise. For example, send away, I never shape with any dog. And then, for example, if I'm teaching like an article indication, I'm often using the shaping there.
Okay. That is an interesting take on this. Okay, now the next question for you is, for a marker, would you use a verbal cue or would you use a clicker? I think we've often heard you using chip, I think, as one of your markers.
Yeah. It's also very much depending on the exercise. The clicker can be very beneficial if we are teaching our dogs in very low arousal state, and we want to mark some very specific things for the dog. For example, if I'm teaching article indication, I want my dog to put the chin on the ground, but without touching the article. So the clicker can be very good there. But for example, when I'm marking the moment when my dog can, in a high arousal state, for example, in retrieves, when he can like come between my legs and catch the ball together with a dumbbell, I'm only using my voice as a marker, because there the clicker would be unimportant and not necessary. And also the clicker could get my dog thinking too much. And I want in that exercise that my dog is just like using all of its power and a lot of speed and be very fast and without thinking at all. And so it always depends a little bit on the situation and the exercise, either one I'm choosing.
Okay, so as a puppy, you generally, when you start obedience, you introduce both the verbal cue and the clicker?
Yes, usually when I'm starting with my puppies, I start with a voice, and then I add the clicker at some point of the puppy age when I'm needing it.
Okay, wow. Okay. Another question, although This is not completely related to emotions, but would you like to speak about this? Can you please talk
Yes.
about puppy selection and what things you focused? Or do you also look at some emotions when you're selecting a puppy?
Yes. So um, I'm the first thing, of course, I'm selecting a pup from the bloodline, uh, which which are proven to have those qualities, what I want to have in my dog. And the bloodline is not the only important thing. I'm also very keen that both parents and the grandparents, but especially the parents, the father and the mother of the puppy, also possess those qualities that I want to have in my dog. So I basically, I'm very careful that the mother could be that kind of dog that I would like to have as as myself, and the father is the kind of dog that I would like to have myself. And then I'm also looking like what are usually those what are the positive things what in those bloodlines, what are the negative things what the both parents have, and they would balance each other's, because we never have, of course, perfect dogs, like we don't have perfect handlers. And that, like, for example, I can look if the female and the brothers of the female need more dominance, for example, and more like I talk about like this kind of willingness to control the helper in protection phase, and then I can, for example, look that if I see that there is a little bit too much impulsiveness, for example, in the mother line, I can try to find a male who has very good self-control. So for me, the most important traits are self-confidence. That's like number one, that the dog is very self-confident and very brave, likes to meet different people, is not shy or like reserved anyhow. I also want to see a dog who is like moving well in all different different surfaces and different situations. Then high fighting spirit, good grip, like a full stable grip, of course. The dog who is also strong in aggression, that not a fearful aggression, but out of the dominance, out of the possession games. Then I would like to have, of course, a dog who has good self-control, because nowadays I feel that we have too many very impulsive dogs who are immediately starting whining or getting nervous if they don't, for example, get rewarded. So I give a lot of emphasis also for the good self-control, that the dog is able to be calm and focused before we let him work. And then when I'm selecting a pup, I also choose my puppy when they are like 6 weeks old, 7 weeks old. And I'm trying to find a pup who is very confident, robust, plays well, and also able to control its nerves and control its impulses. I wouldn't take the dog who is the most active of the litter, or unable to relax, or getting easily very noisy, for example. So these are important for me.
Okay. Good night. I hope that helps. Yes, sorry, you were saying?
There is also one thing what I wanted to say, that it's also important that the breeder has done good work with puppies. So the breeder is showing like a strengthening environmentally those puppies. The puppies have got a lot of social contacts when they have been aged between 3 weeks up to 7 weeks, and the breeder has played with them, and the puppies are not, of course, living in some kennel only without getting much contact. So that's also an important thing when selecting a puppy or the breeder.
Right. And when do you generally get your puppy? You said 6 weeks is when you select your puppy.
7 weeks old. So in Finland, we always get our puppies when they are 7 weeks. In some countries, it can be 8 weeks. So it depends a little bit on the rules of the country, but here it's 7 weeks.
Okay, great. There's another question from Kashi. In a dumbbell retrieve or a recall exercise, should I keep my legs open for the dog to pass through to build its speed? Because sometimes the dog slows down as it approaches me to avoid bumping into me. What do you do to build speed and recall or retrieve?
Okay, so these are two different exercises. So in the recalls, I don't let the dog run through my legs. In the recall, I teach that the end position is the best, and the dog loves to come in front of me from the short distance first. Then I'm often using a bit of frustration. Somebody's holding my puppy, and I'm running away, and I'm guiding the little pup already when they are 3-4 months old to sit in front of me in the end of the recall. And I'm trying to introduce them that this is the ultimate goal, and the dog has a lot of fun to come there. And if the dog is slamming into me or doing little mistakes like this, I take it away step by step. I don't punish the dog from that. I'm just basically, when the dog is like 1 year or after that, I'm asking them like, sit and wait, and I do one step away from the dog and ask him to correct his position. But I do it very nicely, and so that the dog doesn't feel that it was not a good idea to come to sit in front of me. And then the retrieves I'm building with two-tuck game. So I'm teaching that the dog is collecting first two similar objects, and later he learns to collect dumbbell and the ball. And I'm using my voice and emotions to make a little bit stress that he has to speed up. They're like, oh, yo, yo, and when the dog takes them, that is perfect. And then the dog has a lot of fun. And this is a method I originally learned from Tim Heuwinkel from Peter Scherk from Germany. They have been doing this like 20 years. And then I start to lengthen the distance. And so that when the dog is running to the dumbbell, he already wants to speed up when he returns fast, and he wants to have the ball to his mouth. And then in the beginning, the dog always gets it between the legs. But this is a bit different than the long distance recall, because we started from so short distance first, and it's anyway so short that the dog is not having time to think about, and we can add there a little bit more stress with our voice. So then the dog has learned this like 2 years, and when we first time then ask them to sit in front of us, and so it's like kind of like quite easy to keep it very fast.
Kashi, I hope that helps. So like you said, you start a few things after a year old. So when do you generally compete with your dogs? Do you generally think of an age after which you will? After 2 years or after 3 years? Yeah.
It takes me minimum 2 years to prepare my dog to competition obedience, because the first year it goes for teaching the little parts of the exercises for the dog first perfect. Then the next half year goes to start to put those exercises together slowly and add some competition parts for them. Then, of course, the next half year goes to minimum. The half year goes to preparing my dog to competition style handling and not getting rewarded and so on. And usually my dogs are like 2.5 years old before they are ready. I think with Ratu, for example, I did the BH when he was about 2 years old. Then I did IPO 1, 2, and 3 when he was 2.5 years old. And then with Inspis, it's very individual. So when we have a little bit more difficult dog, a little bit more dominant dog, not so active dog by nature, then it takes usually 1 year more. So Inspis was already 3 years old when I did his IPO 1 and 2 and 3. So he was a bit older. And also Helge was more Inspis type of dog. So he also was a little bit older. And typically the dogs are like 4 years old before they go to the World Championships. Some dogs may do it a little earlier, but it's not good to rush. It's good to train them very individually and look that they are well prepared and very highly motivated.
Right. Okay. Are you thinking of ever getting a female dog to compete with?
I think I'm more a male person. The female, it's a bit more difficult to find a strong female who can do excellent protection, I feel so. But for some handlers, it can be easier to guide a female first because it's easier to handle them. The obedience can be a little bit easier, and also control in protection can be easier to build. So usually I think the beginner should always first start with a female. And then males are from working line malinois or working line shepherds. They are usually better for more experienced handlers. Of course, we have exceptions, but generally so. but I think I'm searching more the male because I'm used to guide quite strong dogs, and it's easier to work with my helper also with the strong dogs.
Right. Okay. Is it true that females listen a little bit more, or they are easier?
I think that the females are usually a bit lesser dominant, so they are more adaptive. So usually the handler, how to say, they are more a little more softer, a little bit more adaptive. So it's easier to handle them. They usually don't need so like a strict guidance from the handler. Not so maybe not so many corrections, or not so how to say, black and white. I think with males the problems can become bigger if the handler is a bit insecure, for example. So the handler must be more conscious about the body, and so to guide a good male. Of course, we can have some males too, which are very easy and adaptive, but the good males, I think they need a little bit more experience.
Right. Okay, this is a very interesting question. How do you deal with students who are getting frustrated or angry with their dog while they are training? Do you ever
Okay,
get angry yourself? Yeah.
so of course I'm explaining them that usually it's the handlers, how to say, the handler maybe has like wrong expectations, that often the frustration and angry mood is coming because the handler doesn't know what he or she should do better. So we can try to split the exercise very simple. Perhaps we practice first without the dog and make it first easy for the handler to do it right. And then we can also try to do it easier when we take the dog also, that we make the training so that the handler has more chances to guide the dog correctly. And then of course, if the handler has more difficulties in controlling his own emotions or adjusting his expectations, then of course I could, for example, propose to go for the sport psychologist. It's also good for people who want to reach like high results in the competitions, but sometimes, because I'm not a psychologist myself, so I can give you tips how to train dogs, but I'm not a specialist of changing like humans or trainers' minds. So then I think that sometimes a sport psychologist can be also worth to talk, for example, and change those things.
Right. Great. That's a great question. Okay. This is about a little bit of bite work. Do you always do aggression or defense work with all of your dogs, or is it there a type of dog that doesn't benefit from defense? For example, does the protection sufficiently without defense drive?
Okay. Yeah. So this is something that nowadays we usually always start with defense drive with our puppies, who are usually something between 3 to 4 months old. But I think this also needs very skilled helper. And it could be that if the helper is not very experienced, it can be more beneficial for the dog that the helper works only with the prey drive and makes the barking out of frustration. And then also we have some very successful dogs. For example, Helge, like my first world champion dog, he was trained originally out of the prey drive, and his barking faces were made out of frustration. He was also a dominant dog who had a very strong defense side too, but it was not really triggered out, let's put it on this way. And he still wanted to control the helper, and he was very convincing in his work. But so I want to just point out that we also have some dogs that you can reach very high results without working with the aggression. But of course, we get usually a little bit more and better guarding phases when we also know how to work with aggression, and we open also the defense drive from young age. But in certain cases, it can be better for the combination, for the handler, for the dog, and for the helper, that they only work with the prey drive and make the aggression out of the frustration.
Okay, that's extremely interesting. Okay. Talking of the barking, like you just mentioned, for Helge, it was more out of prey. So now, even in pet dog training, sometimes people do ask us to teach a dog to bark, or sometimes to tell them not to bark, a quiet command. But, a lot of times we see that you end up teaching a dog to bark, but the mindset is slightly different. Or the dog is barking because he's getting scared of something. You do end up telling him to keep quiet, but the fear doesn't really go.
Yeah.
So how would you, tackle?
I think it's of course important to understand why the dog is barking. Like, is the dog barking out of the fear? Is he barking out of the, let's say, some territorial aggression, or what's the reason of his bite? If he is barking out of frustration, and I guess in the most of cases, the dogs are barking out of frustration or fear. And then usually, if we want to get the dog more confident, we shouldn't focus on the barking so much, but more like the enhancing the dog's mood before he starts to bark, and teaching him in these situations some alternative option how to handle himself. And for example, getting the dog's attention somewhere else, teaching him some basic commands like "sit here and watch at me. I'm the person you can trust," and then of course like trying to prevent the situation escalating so bad that the dog is already barking. And this would be, for example, when we are teaching a dog to walk in the leash on the streets without barking the other dog who is coming, for example, towards us, or for example, if there comes a strange person to our house or something like this. So we can teach the dog like before he starts to bark, that give him a mission, teach him first this separately, for example, sit and watch at me, and then rewarding the dog very mightily from that, the best reward what we can find. And then we can teach the dog to, for example, sit and heel us with the eye command. So the dog learns that when he sees another dog, his mission and the best solution is to take an eye contact for the handler, and then the dog gets rewarded from that. So we can try to think the situation on this way. But of course, this is a very large question, and depending always on the situation. And in certain cases, of course, we have to also correct the dog from that if it's and say that you can't do in this way. But then it's very important that the dog knows what we will ask him next, so the dog has like solution for it after correction.
Okay. So talking of corrections, Mia, so how should our emotions be while correcting the dog? Should you really show it on your face, or should you have a straight face? How should it really be?
I think it again depends so much on the situation, and it also depends on dog's personality and what kind of relationship we have with the puppy or with the dog. So I think in many cases, the handlers are correcting the dogs even without realizing it. They give a little correction from the leash. For example, if the dog is pulling, or for example, in the tracking, I can correct a dog from not going over the step where is food. I can say, a little correction from the leash. And then, of course, I don't want my dog to take a face contact on me. I only want him to slow down a little bit and sniff a bit better for that particular step where the food is hiding. And then in certain cases, it can be important to really stop the dog and say, hey, stop what you are doing and watch to my eyes. And then when the dog does that, then we can, give the dog good feeling. Oh, that's nice. Now you do it right. And then, for example, reward the dog or give him a new mission to do. So sometimes we need the dog to focus on us and listening us after correction. So then the face contact can be beneficial.
That's extremely interesting. Wow. Okay. Now, how would you So there are certain situations where the dog is also fearful, but so is the handler. For example, certain environments when they are in. What would you suggest in this situation? Is it really a bad combination to have a fearful dog and a handler? And how should one handle that?
Okay, I should first start to train this handler without dog. So I will try to show him some really like acting skills, like how the self-confident handler walks, how the self-confident human stands, how he walks, and what kind of voices he's using, how we have to hold the head position, how we are using, it's like making the handler very body conscious first. Then the next step would be that I will start to teach the handler to use different emotions in the voice, like practicing like switching and shifting from one praising voice to another. And then we can then when the handler learns that, we can practice also to shift from no command to super nice. For example, if we use this kind of, oh, that is so nice, what are you doing? Like this kind of praising. And teaching the handler first to work with emotions without the dog. So because otherwise the handler is not able to do it when the dog is there, because all the attention goes for that, and that is unimportant. And when the handler has learned those skills, then I will start to teach the handler to work with this dog in some very easy and comfortable situation where we have no distraction and the dog feels fear lesser. And when that works and we can teach some skills for the dog, then we can go a little bit more difficult situations, adding something there which might cause some distraction and the dog gets distracted a little bit. But of course, it's important to try to keep the stress level as low as possible, because if the dog gets very fearful and nervous, it's very hard to learn. Like we know it ourselves. I cannot learn anything if you put like a big spider right next to me. I'm like, that's like very, difficult. I will run away. No matter what you promise me, 1 million euro, it's not going to happen.
Right, right.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. So in that kind of a phobia, could a dog have such kind of a phobia like you have with a spider? And then
Yeah, I believe
how
so. I
do
mean, it's I think dogs as well as we humans, we can have some bad fears, which is very difficult to overcome, perhaps never. And for example, we have some dogs who are very afraid of shooting, and it is something that we just basically have to avoid. They will not overcome that fear. So some dogs have just some slight maybe fear or insecurity about it, and then we can make them stronger and get used to it. But if the dog is very fearful, it's like it can be very, and it is very genetic. So it's not possible. And the same is also with the dog breeds, that we cannot do like Chihuahua to become like IGP world champion, because they will never go over that fear that they would just attack to a man and have fun with that. And I love to fight with a with a sleeve and handle the stick. So and dogs who are suitable for this sport, they don't even find it fearful, they find it fun. So there are a lot of differences in the personalities.
right? And that do fears have a lot to do with genetics or the early raising period, or it could just happen even later on, like a 1-year-old could develop a fear.
I think that fears are proven to be quite heavily genetic, quite hereditary. So they have quite high number to get further. Like I think it's proven in many researches, but I don't. I can't give you the numbers because I am not like I don't have that experience, but I know some people who have made scientific researches about that, uh, and I understood that they are very highly genetic. But of course, often with those dog breeds which I'm working with, like Malinois or German Shepherds, they usually are lesser fearful because they are bred for, of course, being working dogs. So we see it much lesser there. I lose you a little bit now, like I can't hear you.
Yes. Okay.
Now I
Can
hear
you
you.
hear me now? Yes. Okay. Now another question. In a multi-dog household, could the emotions of one dog affect the other?
Sure, they will, because emotions are contagious, and basically between humans we are mirroring emotions, and also we are mirroring emotions between the dogs and the humans, but also between dogs emotions are going to each other. So for example, if you have like a doorbell ringing and the one dog is running there and getting really like aggressive and a bit fearful and barking and stressed, also it goes for the other dog, the puppy, and he also feels that something is happening now. The other dog is stressed, so perhaps I also have to get stressed about it. So it's like a kind of biological mechanism in dogs, that emotions go also through to the other dog from one dog.
Okay. So probably we have to fix it in the first dog. Now I can understand this with our two dogs. We have a pit bull and a golden retriever,
Yeah.
and he would bark in the beginning. She would never bark. And now she has also started barking when someone comes in. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
this is clearly why. Yeah. Okay. And do dogs feel sad and depressed as well, especially when, there is a death of a family member or their handler or another dog in the house who they've lived with? Yeah.
Yeah, so dogs are also capable of feeling sad and depression. So they are capable of feeling many similar emotions than we are, and this is also actually proven in some researches that it's also true that they can also feel sad and depressed.
Because we have observed certain dogs, even in the kennel setup, who keep looking at the wall and they keep sitting. So would that all mean signs of sadness?
Um, of course, now it's like difficult, of course, to say anything like sure about that. But can be that he's bored, or he's feeling a bit depressed for a reason or another. But if he's like very melancholically sitting there and standing the wall and having difficulties to, for example, to get excited about things, so yeah, it could be.
Okay. Now talking about overexcitement in dogs, yeah. So a lot of owners struggle with handling overexcitement, but I'm guessing it's a natural emotion to be excited about anything, which should be not completely suppressed, I guess, even in dogs.
Yes. Yes. So
So
yeah, I think especially with working dogs such like Malinois, it's they get easily very overly excited about things because we have bred them to be so, because they need to be super excited of playing, for example, or very excited to search the ball and have a lot of fun with the ball. And I don't see it a problem, but I feel that we also have to make sure that when we are breeding dogs who gets easily excited about working and easily excited about playing with the ball or tugs, that we also breed dogs who have good self-control, that they don't get like too nervous or completely flip, so that they have ability to also get relaxed when nothing happens, and they have also ability to focus and wait their turn. Of course, it's also about training, so it's not completely about genetic, and a lot of things can be changed when we train them right, but we also have personality trait, and impulsiveness is also highly genetic thing. So it's also something to think about when we are breeding dogs.
right, okay. I think that's my last question to you is that a lot of clients generally ask us that, is my dog really happy? So how can we know that are we doing the best for our dogs?
I think I think it's not only for the pet owners, but also for many working dog owners and dog sport trainers, important learn to interpret the dog's body language, and understanding that what kind of things usually are the signs of happiness. And also, like, if we think about two things, the one is the arousal level, what the dog can be very highly aroused, and the dog can be low aroused, and the dog can also feel like positive emotions or negative emotions, and something between that. So of course, the signs of highly aroused dog who is happy is usually that, the tail is wagging, and the dog gets like excited, it moves a bit more, and usually that the ears are the ears are also a little bit. The dog can be super happy, but same time like putting the ears back if he's like, for example, jumping towards the handler, and super happy. He can show like same time a little bit like submissive behavior, but kind of like when the dog is we have to look like the eyes of the dog. They are usually very, very important, that the dog has like open eyes. He's focused on watching the handler without any fear, without any nervousness. Ears are up, the dog is breathing normal, not like showing the gums and really like stressed. And then of course the tail is, like we talked, the body is relaxed, not too stiff, not prepared for something. But when we are training the dog for some sport, we have to also understand that we are not expecting the dog to be happy when he's doing obedience. We are expecting the dog to be there enthusiastic. So that's completely two different things, because the dog can be super happy and go to the tree, like, oh, I'm walking here and I'm rising my leg up and I'm marking this tree. But the dog can be like really excited to work. And that's another kind of mood. So enthusiasm is different than just being happy. but I think the most important is to always observe that the dog is feeling good and feeling confident, and not going to this kind of stressed or bored or submissive side of the negative emotions. So I like educating with the body language to people, and perhaps showing videos for them, like that's when the dog shows here the happiness or the enthusiasm or the excitement, and here the dog shows the submissiveness and so on.
Right. Okay, great. So Mia, would you like to say something just as a summary of how important are emotions in dog training?
So of course I would like to tell that emotions are like extremely important thing, and it's really important to learn to improve your own body consciousness, your own vocal register, how you talk to your dog, different tones in your voice, different praising voices, because you want it or not, your emotions will go to the dog. And if you don't practice them, then perhaps you will show them the wrong emotions in the wrong moments. So it's very important to come like conscious about them, and then learn to communicate with your dog, and also interpret your dog right, and learn to use them in the right way. And then you can get like really deep connection with your dog. You can make your dog feeling happy and self-confident. It also affects how self-confident and hopeful dog you can raise from puppy age. So my goal is always to raise very high hope dogs, so who believe in themselves. And I think also emotions show a big part in this training process. And of course, it also enables the excellent performances in the high level. So it's all in all very important.
Right.
And fun, a lot of fun.
Yes. So everyone seems to have enjoyed your session. These are just a few comments about that. And it's been really, really an honor, Mia, to have you on board. I mean, I've been a big fan of your work forever and will continue to be so. Is there any way we can be learning from you? Online courses, yes, so that everyone knows who's watching.
Yes. Of course, I also want to thank you for the nice interview. It was very good questions, and also nice questions what the participants have written here. And I'm glad if I was able to answer them somewhat like well here. And we have a site inspireyourdog.com, where we will have, like, in the next year, we will have there like some new videos coming about emotions and how we have trained them we have one theater director who helped us to improve the handlers' body consciousness and voice, and I found it very helpful for those handlers, and it was a very exciting process to do. And so we have a lot of videos available there and a membership, so if people are interested, they can also join. Everybody is very welcome.
Great. And would you like to come to India sometime?
For sure. I have never been there, and it would be very great to come one day.
Great, great. So I guess everyone who's watching, pick this up since you have agreed. We will definitely want you one day.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.